Hey guys, good morning. Not in my car. I had some moments, maybe to myself, we'll see if anyone interrupts me, this morning, and I'm back sooner than I expected with another video. And part of what prompted this was I was watching this YouTube video the other day, and it's by like some big influencer, I don't know, some entrepreneur guy, about why you should create video content. And it's not a title I would normally click on because I'm like, I do not care about the 7 reasons to create video content, but it came on after something else I was watching. And his reason was not what I expected. It was basically, imagine if you had video content from like your great-grandparents, your grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, where you could learn about them, and they were teaching you things and you could connect with them, and how great would that be? And it was basically like creating video content, so not for you guys, not for even me, but so that my children, if I have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, will have this, maybe, if YouTube exists. I don't even know where this content's gonna go like 100 years from now, right? Or where it's gonna be stored or where it's going to exist. But imagine if I had, or you had, or any of us had like videos from our ancestors or our relatives or distant relatives kind of teaching us how to do some of these spiritual things and spiritual practices such as shamanic healing. And so that kind of remotivated me to get back and make videos and share some teachings about shamanic healing, because what if 100 years from now, wherever this video might be then, it stumbled upon this trove of videos of me talking about how to manage these gifts, how to manage your abilities, like how to start doing things. And then if I'm not here, and if none of my offspring take up or follow in my footsteps, then there's something to guide somebody on these abilities, right? Okay, so there's that reason for creating video content. Now, if you're new here, you might not even be watching this far, but my name is Sarah Petruno. I am a reluctant shamanic practitioner, meaning I didn't wake up one day deciding I wanted to do this. I didn't wake up one day deciding I wanted these gifts. I found out I had them around when my first child was born 10 years ago. And still sometimes I question if I want them or if I want to deal with them, but I it's part of who I am, and I can't escape it. I try to quit. I try to not do it anymore because it is a hard path. But you know what? It always just pulls me back. And that's why I say reluctant. I didn't like wake up in this tradition and be like called to it in any sort of romantic way. It was more like I was forced to it and like pulled me into it, kicking and screaming, and I didn't want it. And that might be where some of you are, where you're like, okay, I have these abilities and these gifts, and I I know that they're there, and I don't really want them, and I don't really want to deal with them. Or maybe you do want them, and great. I'm glad that that's you. I don't really know where I was going with this, except that I guess I'll start talking about more shamanic healing stuff, and things related to that, things related to opening up your abilities more, and talking about that, and teaching on basically what did I do when I first started, and how did I get going with this. And I've talked about this a number of times, but you never know what stage you're at, and if you even heard it the first time I talked about it or the 10th time I talked about it, until you're ready to hear it, right? I did a reading the other night where I talked to this girl who was basically having her awakening starting, the switch flipped on, and it was spirits were coming to her and she could sense them, and it was time. And it kind of reminded me of kind of where I was when I first started, where I didn't really have any resources. And imagine 10 years ago, YouTube wasn't as prolific. There wasn't blogs on this stuff. If you could find a shamanic practitioner, good luck getting them to believe you. There's a lot of elitism and gatekeeping around this practice. and still is, but there's just a lot more resources available today than there was way back when. And even then, it's like the amount, and even now, the amount of resources that are available can be kind of overwhelming. Like, you know, do I take some course? Where do I start? Like, how do I start doing, like, how do I know that I have some sort of ability, like, how do I start, like, using it in a purposeful way? And so I did it in this really roundabout long way, because I didn't have a living guide, except for, like, my sister, who was kind of doing it just a little bit ahead of me, alongside me in mediumship. And, my husband, who was supportive and believed me, but he, you know, not really a guide. All of my guides were like the spirit guides and the spirits, which is kind of how shamanism is largely taught anyway. But when you're first starting out, like, you have to kind of get to a point where you can, like, communicate with them, your spirit guides, and trust them, and trust what you're getting, and trust your intuition, which can be a big jump, especially if you, for most people actually, you know, if you're coming from a very physical minded world that we live in, to having to trust something and believe something that nobody else can see or feel, really, except you, you know, which is pretty lonely and also pretty scary. So when I first started, it was like around 10 years ago now. So I'm 10 years ago, Sarah, I was in graduate school. I was about to have my first child, and she was due on October 31st in 2012. And around that time, my sister had this dream where a relative came to her and said, you know, something to the effect of, if you don't get your gift sorted out, like, now, then your granddaughter is basically going to have you're not your granddaughter, your niece, that was me. The child I was carrying was your niece, is not going to have, like, anyone to help her when her gifts start developing. And so that kind of flipped the switch in our family to get things going. And my sister went first, and then down the line, it kind of became, like, evident, and I'll kind of spare the details of that part of the story, because there's, like, a lot of personal details that are involved, and I don't know, you know, I want to respect the family members that don't want to be included in the story, and I don't know who does and who doesn't. But essentially, I found out that I had this gift also, that I had a gift of energy healing and shamanism also. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't believe it. I didn't think it was true. I thought it was, like, fluffy and frivolous and, like, not useful to anybody, and definitely couldn't be me, because I had all these stereotypes in my mind of what a shamanic healer should look like, and I didn't look like that. I mean, those were all wrong, because shamanism exists globally and has existed globally for 35,000 years, and there's different lineages, of course, but somebody who looks like me could do that. Now I know that, because, you know, there's European shamanism, Celtic shaman, it's everywhere. It was, like, kind of the way of the world 40,000 years ago. Anyway, it came to this point of, okay, I know I have these abilities, like, what exactly do I do to start? And I had limited time. I was a graduate student. I had a baby, like a very young baby. And so I didn't have a lot of time or patience or desire to want to dedicate to the metaphysical, but I was kind of like, I don't know, I just was like, fine, if you spirit guides want me to do this, like, here's what I can give you. I can give you 30 minutes a day, every other day after dinner. And that's how I got started. And that's kind of still to this day how I kind of recommend people start developing their gifts, is because it's like, choose a time, do it every other day. It doesn't have to be a long amount of time. It can be 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I did 30 minutes. And dedicate time to practice it. Okay. And practice it. And you're like, okay, what do I do to practice? And so for me, I said, I'm going to do something spiritual every other day for 30 minutes, something to advance my abilities. And it wasn't the same thing. It was like whatever I felt like that day. It was like, I did a meditation. I listened to drumming. I would lay down with, like, a crystal on my forehead and, like, see what happened. And I just tried different things. During that time frame, I would go on walks and sense energy, and I have a video about that, I think, below, and I'll put a link below, about energy walks. And I would do something every other day for 30 minutes to start to develop my abilities, whatever they were. I didn't even know what they were. I didn't, like, that time I was like, I don't even have any abilities. Like, my ability is to do a research experiment. I don't know what any of these psychic abilities are. And slowly kind of dawned on me over time, like, I always did have these abilities to read people. They just weren't manifest. I just didn't recognize them. Like, in my job, I had always been called to, like, read a situation. I had a boss once at UC San Diego who would call me, like, into the office to, like, read somebody for him, like, and be like, because he was a new professor, and so he was like, he trusted me for at that time, I didn't know why or what I was doing, to give him the read on what a person's true intentions were. And at that time, I didn't even know I was, like, had any ability, but he, like, thought I could read people really well. And so he would call me in and be like, this guy, like, what's your read on him? And, like, trust me to give me these reads. And that's kind of a way I used my abilities, like, before I even knew I had them. Okay, so we're getting off track here. Rounding back. So when you're first starting to develop your abilities, setting aside some time to practice every other day. I wouldn't recommend every day because that's kind of intense. And if you can't do every other day, then, like, twice a week. But every other day was easier for me to remember because I could be like, did I do it yesterday? No. Okay, then I'll do it tonight. And it was just like, I'm going to find a meditation, or I'm going to listen to drumming, or I'm going to lay down with this crystal and see what happens, or I'm going to, like, call in my spirit guides and see if I can sense them in some way. I just made up things, like, of what I could potentially do. And it wasn't, I know this is hard for some people to be like, well, I need a specific assignment of what I need to do, but it's really just like, you're just kind of exploring different aspects of your intuition, and doing that every other day helps to start hone those abilities and hone and build your gifts, so that you can even, like, see what the strong gifts are and, like, start to even get a sense for them or a feel for them, or really open them up. Okay. And that's kind of where I would start. That's where I started, is I wasn't doing, like, readings. I wasn't, like, I wasn't really doing much except this every other day I'm going to do something spiritual, something psychic, something intuitive. And that's what I did for about 6 months. And then after that, I kind of got into practicing energy sensing and doing energy scans, and things like that. And I didn't even get into shamanic journeying probably until, like, a year later, because it was just this slow process of me starting to build my abilities just from the beginning to getting to the point where, like, I could get clearer visuals so that I could even, like, go on a journey, or that I could trust what I was getting on a journey. So that's kind of where I'd recommend starting, is doing something spiritual, something intuitive every other day, and not having any expectation, and just seeing what happens. Now, I don't even know where this video was going. It was me talking about why I'm going to create YouTube content and starting your psychic abilities, starting to get, building up your psychic abilities. I do have a whole class on this. It's called Intuitive and Spiritual Development 101. It's like 6 classes. They're each like an hour to an hour and a half long. With, like, a bunch of exercises. It's on my website. It's a very DIY. You, like, buy it and you get a login to a web page where all the classes are. And the price reflects that. Like, it used to be, like, 4 times as expensive when it was, like, in this separate website, like, real fancy. But now it's just, here's the content and here's the class. And I've been asked for the class again to teach it, and I'm not going to be teaching until next year probably. Whenever I get the nudge to do it again, which isn't yet. I've talked about in other, I don't even know if I talked about in other videos or blog posts, basically, that my spirit guide said for me not to teach for 2022. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I do have a class on this. So I'll link that below. And that's pretty much it for this video. I don't even know what we'll talk about in our next video. We'll see. So that's all. Enjoy your Saturday, and I will talk to you later. Bye.